ask your question, you know, get to your question fairly promptly, okay?
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question for Colin. So I know that you just now were speaking about solar projects, but I wanted to ask, as governor, will you specifically request a task force for offshore wind projects in the Gulf of Maine?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and it's something we absolutely need to move forward towards. I actually have a friend from high school who was just out offshore in Rhode Island. He works for the U.S. Department of Interior, and he was looking at the offshore wind project that's being built out there. It's incredibly exciting. Let me tell you a little about why I am so passionate about clean and renewable energy. When I used to work at Stonyfield Yogurt, and 10 years ago, Stonyfield at the time put the biggest solar array in the state on the roof of the yogurt plant. Now, these numbers might not mean everything to everyone, but just keep track of the comparisons. It was 41 kilowatt array. I was proud on the executive council to cast a vote in favor of what is now the biggest solar array in the state, which is about 950 kilowatts. There's one in Durham that's a little smaller than that. That's the second biggest in the state right now that I fought hard for. But this is the amazing thing. There is a company called Ranger Solar that has projects in both Vermont and Maine that are successful. That's right. I met with them recently. They are planning 3 different potential projects in New Hampshire that range in size from 15,000 to 75,000 kilowatts. Think about that. In 12 years, the biggest one in the state goes from 41 to potentially 75,000 kilowatts. When you invest in technology, instead of just investing in fossil fuel, you lower costs, you create good local jobs, and you protect the environment. I'll stop there. Sounds like a good first step.
Okay, so the way this works, you get up to 2 minutes for an answer, and if the other candidates would like to answer this question also, you can. You don't have to. You're welcome.
Since you're offered.
Sure.
The short answer is yes to offshore wind. I mentioned that in the recent past, and it's part of what I see as a multifaceted test towards what the energy future needs to be. You need to think about conservation, first of all. The best unit of energy you expend is the one that you don't expend at all. It helps with the supply and the demand curve. The second is the environmental impact. The third deals with the diversification. The more sources of energy you have, in this case in New Hampshire or in New England, the less susceptible you are to, say, price shock, for example, things like that. And the fourth is obviously ratepayer impact. And when I look at all those factors, the bullseye in the short and long term is indeed renewable. They check all those boxes off in the long term the right way. One thing to keep in mind too, I'm 100% against Northern Pass. There are a number of reasons for that. One reason is because I do think, from the Canadian side, I think it actually has some very damaging effects in terms of flooding. But for New Hampshire, it doesn't help ratepayers, and it also, I think, would squash, in terms of the future market, what we look at for some of these nascent and exciting forms of renewable. The experts that I talk to say the number one thing we could do to accelerate renewable in terms of its economic viability would be to upgrade and make our grid a smart grid. Because we don't have storage technology quite where we want it yet, particularly for solar, there are things we can do with the grid that would allow us to take advantage of that. So we need to keep our eye on the ball, but one place I invest is why you need more revenue if you want to do it, and I'm willing to talk about revenue, is to create a smart grid.
Absolutely, and I've said this in my campaign so far. You know, one thing I'll say is we look at something like Kinder Morgan or Northern Pass or Algonquin Maritime proposals before us. We're doing it one-off. So what happens is these proposals come in and they go before the Site Evaluation Commission and they look at it in terms of that particular proposal. What we should be doing is looking at our energy needs more futuristically in the next 10 years. So when a project comes in, we define that project in terms of meet what we are as a state. And we're not doing that. So I've said in my campaign thus far that I would have a 10-year strategic economic plan that would include how we do energy. There's no doubt that we in New England, part of the regional grid, are now basically at where we're at maximum in terms of the energy that we're bringing in, but we're going to lose about 25% of the capacity in the next 5 years. And that means we have some of the highest rates in the country. Renewables, conservation is the key to it. And offshore wind is steady wind. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense to divide communities in terms of putting it on ridges. And we need a plan to do it, work with the federal government, work with other states. That's what we need to do. I think you're entirely right.